May the force be with you is a phrase used to wish a person well to overcome a challenge. The invitation in this podcast, May the life force be with you, is to explore what it means to truly feel alive, to appreciate the physical, emotional and spiritual connection to our energy, and finally to understand how this impacts who you are and all that you do. May this conversation inspire you to thrive.
Welcome to May the Life Force be with you. And our intention is that this episode opens your heart, brings more color into your life, inspires you to feel more alive.
Thank you, Karila. And we know why you said colourful on this side of the podcast recording, but it is my job today I want to say welcome our colourful guest, Sarah Chapman, to the podcast. Now, I have a bio for Sarah here, but one of the short things that she sent when we said, how should we introduce you, was to say Sarah is a chameleon. So I'm very interested to see where our conversation heads today. But she's also a mover and shaker whose heart is tied to radically changing healthcare and improving people's lives through innovative technology. In 2007, she left traditional bedside nursing, where she specialised in neonatal and pediatric intensive care, and took on the challenge of global health applied sciences. As a clinical expert in her field, Sarah has actively taken part in breakthrough product development for disruptive technologies. So I'm going to stop just there in that introduction, because I feel like that might feel like a different type of conversation we're going to bring into this space today, where it's very much based in medicine, it's based in technology, it's based in our traditional view of caring, rather than some of the other conversations that we have. So I just wanted to take a pause on that and say, firstly, hello, Sarah.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And my next question is, what is life force, or what did life force mean to you in that previous world that you were working in, which is very much traditional caring, healthcare, and now perhaps an insight into how that might have evolved as you're working with innovative technologies, you're working with systems that are striving for change from what we have today. How might that have kind of evolved over those years?
That is a great question, because I think as all humans, we evolve throughout our lives. So our life force is so different. It can be different day to day. It can be different season to season, year to year. And it can be so different in your career. I think probably very few of us, when we started university, were probably still in those same exact career molds that perhaps we thought we were going to be in at age 18, 19, and 20. So for me, starting off out of uni and where my heart was, I knew at a young age I wanted to help humanity. So it probably started when it was obvious, I would say, when I was about 8, and I wanted to be a fire truck, not the firewoman, but a fire truck. Okay. And I thought it was the coolest thing if I could actually be the truck. And I was very grateful, and that I had parents who told me I could be anything I wanted to be. This is a true story. So when I told my parents, I want to grow up and be a little red fire truck, they told me, you absolutely can, Sarah, because they knew obviously that wasn't going to come to fruition. But at 8, I had this big imagination. So and I just wanted to zip around town, being the little red fire truck, helping people from burning buildings and saving cats out of trees. Like, that was my vision. And then I had like a stint where I wanted to be a ballerina. So that really wasn't anything exciting. And then I wanted to help animals. Jacques Cousteau was my hero growing up, and I wanted to save all the dolphins. But this all eventually landed in me becoming a nurse. I quit pre-med because I realized the life of a doctor is, for me, the life of a traditional doctor was not going to be balanced enough, it just looked so horrible. I mean, honestly, when you're in uni at 19, you're like, oh gosh, that looks awful. You're like married to the hospital. You're married to your job. You have no life outside, and you're in a lot of student debt because I went to school outside the UK. So it was very expensive. So I landed in nursing and I loved it. I did neonatology for about 8 years, some pediatric intensive care. So I, took care of the little tiny infants, very sick, premature babies.
Can I just ask, what's life force like on that? Like, that's like, to me, you're really on an edge of life force if you're looking after a newborn that isn't very well. Like, what do you experience about life force there?
It's interesting because you see life force come and you see it go, unfortunately, in that area of medicine. And
what does it look like when it comes, and what does it look like when it goes?
When the life force comes, I'm specifically talking about the infants, not necessarily my life force. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, the infants, if you don't mind sharing.
No, it's actually quite beautiful how much power can be held in such a tiny package who can't even really communicate with you other than through a cry and basic emotions, baby emotions and reactions. But it's amazing how much you can feel from an infant. And I'm not a mother, but I could feel things from other mothers' infants. And it's amazing how these little life forces come into the world and they can impact so many people. Obviously, their families and their new parents, but then it impacts us as clinicians too. You actually get quite attached to their little life forces, especially when you're caring for the same baby day after day while they might be in the hospital for 3 months. You go to work and you take care of the same infant, so you're rooting for their life force to survive. And then there's the flip side, where you know that this particular life force was only meant to be here for just a very short time. It was only maybe meant to be there for 3 days. This baby's life force was only meant to be with us for a few months. And it's almost like their bodies were just too sick to contain their life force. Their life force is too big. And
do you see the life force going in a baby that is dying?
You do. And I've had and I'm going to call it a privilege, because I think when you're invited into this sacred space where a parent is going to be losing their child, I think we all wish that it didn't happen, right? We all wish that this world, we wouldn't have children that were losing their life forces, but it does happen. So my ethos is and was, I'd like to at least help carry these families through these times rather than let them alone to be so overwhelmed with grief they don't even know how to take the next breath. So babies I feel like these infants are even wiser than us. Like I swear these babies even knew. Some of them, you just feel it in your soul that they know I'm only here to impact the humans around me for 24 hours or for 3 months or whatever it is. And there's one in particular, if you don't mind, I'll share just a quick story.
Yeah, please.
There was one baby who, let's just call her Samantha. I'll change her name. And her life force was with us for 3 months. And she was born into my hospital at the time. And she had a lot of just congenital anomalies that were not compatible with life. And so from the beginning, the parents knew they weren't going to have very long with her. And she kept going and she held on, and she brought so much joy to her parents while she stayed in the hospital. Her parents and I became really close. I became their nurse all the time when I was working. They would come in, they'd make me dinner and bring me dinner, and I would make them like Christmas gifts, and I'd give them Christmas gifts because it was over holiday season. And then one day the baby started showing signs that she was declining quite rapidly. And the parents lived about 45 minutes from the hospital. And I came into my shift that morning, and because I knew her so well, because her life force was tied to mine in this short amount of time, I knew that something was happening. Something had drastically changed in her assessments. And I was like, this is not her. I think that she's telling us that today's my day, because I do believe people have a say in when they go. And so I called her parents. And unfortunately, they were 45 minutes away from the hospital. And she was deciding to leave this planet much quicker than her parents could get there. So I remember watching her heart rate dropping on the monitor, and she was laying in her bassinet all snuggled. And I thought, her parents are not going to get here in time to be with her. And I just remember I immediately started weeping, and I scooped her up out of the bassinet. And I told all my colleagues, I was like, I'm taking her off all of these monitors. I'm taking her off all of this stuff. I'm going to be with her. And we had like a side cuddle room that was like a little family room with a bed and a rocking chair. And I said, I'm going to take her in there, and I'm just going to spend whatever time she has left. I think that she's telling us she's going. So I took off all these wires. I was like, you are not going to be in your bassinet alone. I scooped her up. I just brought her to my neck and my chest, and I took her into this room, and we snuggled. And we snuggled for about 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And as she was snuggled on me, and I'm rocking her, and I'm telling her, if you can wait, just wait till your mommy and daddy get here. Just wait till your mommy and daddy get here if you can wait. But if you can't, it's okay to go. They'll be okay. We'll take care of your parents. I'll take care of them. We will take care of them. Your job here is done if you just can't do this anymore. And I'd say it was about 30 minutes. I was snuggling her for about 30 minutes, and she chose, I'm very honored that she chose to die and leave her life force behind while I was holding her. And her parents showed up about 15 minutes later. And of course, I had to share with them what had happened. And it was a devastating, it was a horrible day. The rest of the day was absolutely atrocious for all of us involved, myself included. And when nurses tell you that we're tough, we might be, but we do sit in the corner and cry when you don't see us. And so I told them what had happened, and then, we spent the rest of the day together. But in this case, I think that she knew that if she had waited till her parents had gotten there, this particular life force and family situation, it might have actually been extra overwhelming for them. And I know that sounds strange, but I've done a lot of pediatric hospice as well. So I've seen a lot of life forces leave the planet. And it's really interesting how children have a very wise sense about them when it comes to death. And they're not scared. I don't think I've ever met a child or a baby who even shows fear in those last moments. They're so innocent with their life force, and it's probably because it hasn't been shrouded with everything that life brings yet. But
it's so interesting.
Yeah, but when children leave the planet, when life forces leave, there's like death doulas, right? We have like doulas for birth, and then we have doulas for death. And I think that there are people that have those gifts on the planet. And yeah, and she's a story that always sticks with me because I feel very privileged and lucky to have held such a life force, and she chose me. And there was all sorts of purpose behind it. Like I said,
how did that affect you? Her dying in your arms.
I genuinely, I felt really honored. I felt like I was in such a sacred space, and it was just her and I in this tiny little room in the middle of California, in the middle of the United States, in the middle of this planet, just two little people in this tiny little room. And that's when she chose to leave. And I felt honored, and I felt grateful. Of course, I was sad. I think I was more sad for her family because I knew that she was, it was her time to go. Had she continued, she would have just suffered. So I felt, sad for her family mostly. I'm still in touch with her parents, and this was 20 years ago.
That's beautiful. I can't help but feel, and throughout you talking, and thank you for sharing that with us. It's strange. It sounds strange to say what a beautiful story, but it is, because I can feel the heart and energy behind that. And that was going to be a question / reflection, was that in a neonatal, in a very young illness, hospice, care environment that you're in, that speech, that ability to communicate isn't there. It really does feel like it's all energy. It's in touch. It's in an unspoken communication, and your sense of wanting to remove from the machines and have the human connection as the thing that was the power, was the sort of message that comes across really strongly, that there's an unspoken energy and a transfer of care that is unspoken in those environments. It's a life force exchange that's very powerful.
It's interesting because my guides say that all babies, like including miscarriages or children that don't live very long, are spirit guides that are never meant to live long, that they've come in to do a specific healing or an activation, and they don't really come in with a soul contract for life. They just come in to do what is needed for the lineage or for the collective, or they come in with a very specific purpose of a short life. And to me, that's a really beautiful view of something that we all know is probably the most traumatic thing on earth, is that these beings, it's like you're confirming what the guides have said about, like, they're not scared of dying because they actually were never coming to do a full adult life, you know, like they're coming for this specific role of activating something in the people that are here. And that's what it sounds like.
I did tell her parents, I said, look, you know, her body was, unfortunately, her body that she was born in was just too weak to contain the grandiosity of her soul. Her soul was so big, and her love and her heart was too big to fit in this very sick body that unfortunately she was born with. And I said that when we had her funeral, when I delivered a part of her eulogy, and because I truly believe that her little soul was so big, she touched so many lives, and she didn't consciously tell us that she even knew it, right? And so to this day, I tell her parents, I'm like, she has made such an impact on me, my fellow coworkers, you, your family friends.
And now everybody listening here today.
And everybody today. Yeah. And she, this little tiny, incredible, cutie little human being has made more of an impact than some grown adults than I know. You know,
what a lesson in just coming, like, just letting your heart be in the world, you know, like, as adults we get so caught up in like complicated ways that we can make a difference in the world, and like just letting your heart be held in the world.
Well, it's interesting that you say complicated ways to make a difference in the world, because I want to take a different track now and ask you how you got from that heart connection life force to taking on the challenge of global health applied sciences, because that sounds as far removed from a heart as you can possibly get. Tell us what you mean by that, and what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing?
You know, I just got to a point where I didn't, it's just really simple. I just didn't want to work in a hospital anymore. I loved the work. You just got a little taste of it. I loved the work, but I'm, like you said earlier, I'm a mover and a shaker. So I always have like 2 big projects, at least minimum, going in my life, if not 3 or 4. I want to try everything on the planet before I leave it. Like, I have always been this way since I was younger. So after doing nursing in a hospital for about 8 or 9 years, I was like, you know, I'm kind of done. I kind of climbed all the ladders I wanted to do within the hospital. And by luck of luck, this dude walks into this hospital I was working at the time, and he's got this big piece of technology. And this big piece of, it's like this thing that rolls on wheels, and it makes your veins glow, so you don't have to stick people more than once with IVs. And I remember he walked in and he was like a sales rep. And I said, oh my gosh, this thing is so cool. I want your job. How can I get it? And he's like, well, you can't have my job, but we're looking for a clinical educator for our company. And I was at the right place at the right time. And so I jumped out of the hospital. I started working for this company that was based in the US. And that's where my career just took a total turn from there. So I started, that led to helping to develop like new iterations of medical devices for that company. It led to me doing some projects overseas in Japan. It led to me traveling around the world, working with various ministries of health to try to change their clinical practices by integrating these particular technologies. And it just, I'm the type of person, so one of my mantras first that might help explain it is yes is the answer, what is the question? So I say yes to most things as long as I know it's not going to hurt myself or others. And so when things come up.
Sorry, just slow that down again, just so people can hear. Yes is the answer. What is the question?
Exactly.
You've already said yes before you know what the question is.
Yes, totally. I can't even take credit for that though, because that was actually from an old boyfriend I used to date many years ago. That was his mantra. And I asked him if I could borrow it as my life mantra. And he said, well, if you ever become famous for it, you have to credit me. So I'm crediting Phil Blythe for yes is the answer. What is the question? But I've totally adopted it. And it's true. So that's just kind of how I got into global healthcare. And then that parlayed into me finding myself in West Africa, starting my own nonprofit where we take children out of the sex trade and child trafficking, and we make sure they get their health care. We put them into a safe space. We make sure they get their schooling.
I mean, again, you've just described something that I would say is on the edge of life force. Like, you take children out of the sex trade. How do you find them? What state are they in? How does this happen?
So the organization is in Benin, and there's not there's not a lack of opportunity to find children in precariously dangerous positions.
Are they on the street?
Yes, they usually are, or they might be under the, I'll use care with some air quotes here, under the care of someone who has purchased them from their family or from their remaining family. All of the children we do find and that we have with us in our programs, they are truly orphans. So they truly don't have a mother or father. So they're either shuffled to another family member or some aunties, or they're left on the streets because it's a developing country if you're in the rural communities, and sometimes it's very hard to feed another child in your family if that child is not your own. And these are your vulnerable children. They're undocumented many times. They don't have birth certificates, so they're lost children. So if they went missing, nobody would miss them. Nobody would care. The government doesn't even know that they are alive. So these children are the ones that find themselves, unbeknownst to them, in these dangerous positions. And every country has different cultural practices. I'm only going to share my experiences. This by no means is a blanket for all developing countries. This is not a statement that's even all of West Africa. I mean, Benin is my second home. I've been doing this for about 12 years in the country with my local friends and family and so forth that live there. But I'm just going to share my observations. So many of these children find themselves in situations where their families or extended families are in such destitute situations that they have no other choice. When you're in a horrible situation, I think all humanity is capable of making choices that we would today say, I would never do.
We speak a lot on this show about survival and what survival mode does to human kindness. And we speak a lot about it because survival is lack of energy. And this show is all about energy. And when you're lacking in energy, you become more animal. You become more...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we revert back to our amphibian brains.
Yeah.
Especially lack of opportunity, lack of resources, lack of compassion. If you were never showed compassion, if you were treated like an animal, like you said, you're going to behave also that way.
From a life force perspective, if your life force energy is so low it's not in your heart, then you're not operating from your heart. If your life force energy is only at the level, if you think of the chakra level, if your life force energy is only operating in the root chakra level, then you are operating from, I need to make sure I can eat tomorrow. You are operating from a state of, I need to make sure that I don't die. And that is a very different way of thinking from when your life force level is in your heart. because when your life force level is in your heart, you're able to have compassion and empathy and all of those things. If your life force level isn't in your heart, then you're not operating from it.
Mm-hmm. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And although the work that we do in West Africa, I think it's really easy for people to look and really judge certain cultural practices.
Yeah.
But I vehemently disagree with that. I think it's very unfair, especially if you've never experienced it or seen it,
and especially from our place of privilege.
Exactly.
Especially from the Western world's level of luxury and privilege. I don't think we have a right to comment on what other cultures are doing.
Agreed. Totally agreed. And like I said, we don't know. Look, if we were in the same positions as I've seen some of my fellow humans in various countries, I'm not so sure we would do the same. We wouldn't do the same things, to be honest with you. I mean, when your only option is you have, a healthy daughter who is of childbearing age, and someone says, I'll give you certain commodities for her as my bride, even though she's 12. And you can't feed your other children. There's nobody there to take. You might be a widow, or you might have many wives, and you have to take care of like 35 children. Like, we can't judge these situations. It's not our cultural practices, and this is your way to feed your family, right? So, yes, I think we'd all fundamentally disagree with these practices, but you also have to see every coin from both sides. And we're not going to make a change in this planet if we just show up like, what do they say? A bull in a china shop and say, this is how you need to change because this is wrong. It's like, no. We have to get to the root of the pain, the root of the lack of resources, the root of where this is coming from. So that is a part of the reason why I built Build a Better Benin, is to really get in with communities and get in with the culture and the language and everything, and kind of try to alleviate some of these practices and things that you would find in this area of the world where we know that cultural pain and cultural hurting of children is happening. The reasons why it's happening, that was not, to be honest with you, that's a very large problem. That's a very large cultural, deeply rooted.
It's a global problem as well.
Exactly. But what we could do with this organization is work alongside my fellow comrades, my fellow humans in Benin on the ground, and come up with programs where we can at least try to get some of these children rehabilitated, try to get them mentally and physically rehabilitated, try to put them in a safe space, try to end the abuse, and hopefully infuse in them through tangible things and intangible. So tangible, like education, food, healthcare, love, just physical, like you're loved, you're safe. And then the intangibles, building up trust again, letting them know that they are loved, letting them know you're valued. Like, our children, when they first come to us, we always ask them, what is your dream? And every single child that's come to us in day one looks at you like you're absolutely insane. They're like, we don't know what this is. What do you mean? What is my dream? Like when I go to sleep, what do you mean? I don't really remember my dreams. What do you mean my dream? My dream for what? They have no idea what that concept is.
Because also at the root chakra level, there isn't the room, there isn't the life force energy is not at the level of being able to dream beyond the day. Beyond, like, there isn't room to dream when you're in survival. Can I ask about, because obviously like sexual energy is life force energy, and children are meant to be full of the life force energy in its innocent form, and obviously child prostitution is a mixing of like the shadow of life force energy. Like, how does it impact their life force energy? How do they turn up from a life force level when they first come?
It's mainly the girls.
Mm-hmm.
As you can imagine, girls, women, little boys and men, all genders and all spectrums of gender. I mean, there are some similarities because we're all human. So you just look at like a young girl who's been affected by sexual abuse or sexual assault. She's going to behave very similar to anybody here who you might know. I mean, that damage is, I think, universal. So they are extremely mistrusting. They're very afraid. And at any moment, they think their life can change. So they tend to be very closed off and or put up walls. So they're either very closed off and meek and demure, or really like almost, I don't want to use the word aggressive, but like really protective of whatever they control, whatever control they do have over their own body, life, heart, and soul. They will exude that. So they come across very hard, very extreme. It comes from a place of mistrust. So they don't follow rules. They often run away. They want to gain any type of control they have because it's been stripped of them. These are common behaviors we see. So our girls are no different there. The environment is what's different. So I always say we do the best with what we have at the moment that we have it. Unfortunately, in certain areas of the world, like West Africa, we don't have access to certain mental health resources, certain even if you even want to go pharmacological routes, certain medications, certain treatments, or you just don't have access. There's no access. So you do the best with what you have, which is very, very minimal. So what we do in our group is we establish with our team, like with our actual, our house mom, house dad, and the older siblings that have already gone through the program. It's a really, really, really important thing for us to maintain a schedule. We maintain our safety parameters. We maintain things around them that they can count on and that they can be assured of. And it's simple things like, they meet with the tutor 3 days a week after school, and this is like a protected space, and you're learning. It's not chaotic. We try to remove the chaos. That's what we do, is we remove the chaos.
That routine, isn't it? That routine and consistency and someone showing up. When they say they're going to, that simple thing really feels like it has a massive ripple effect on their ability to trust. And I think important too is we have both female and male employees. So we have like our house moms who are so sweet, but the couple that actually takes care of the kids every day on the ground. So we have property, and we just built a big house for everybody. It's not an orphanage; it's just a house that's safe. We have a wall built around it, so it's safe for the kids. But this couple that runs it on a day-to-day basis, I have known them for 9 years now. So these are people who, and it took me almost 3 years to vet them before I would even get into like a partnership with them, because I knew that the male energy was going to be very important in the situation as well.
Because they need to experience the sacred, they need safe male energy. Otherwise, the healing doesn't happen.
Exactly. So, and we bring up our boys much differently too. Well, we bring them up very, how do I say this? Very different than what they're used to in West Africa. So we introduce concepts like, what is your dream? And we've introduced this concept. So now you ask a kid who's been with us for a year, what is your dream? And they get excited. They're like, and it changes every year. And they're like, now my dream is this, and now my dream is that. So in those same threads is we teach our children different types of concepts than they would get normally in West Africa. And some of those concepts are like the respect of your body, the respect of other people's bodies, the respect of going about like dating and consent, things that like we take for granted here, but don't exist in a lot of countries. And I'm talking just basics, how maybe the boys should act when they're growing up in their particular culture that works well there, how the girls should behave, and like focusing maybe on school. We really push education with all of our kids and not getting married young, because they get married very young there, like 17 or 18, which is fine. We always tell them you get married whenever you want, have kids whenever you want, but it's
be really a fire truck.
Be a fire truck. We'll send you to school to be a fire truck. What is your dream? Tell me your dream.
And do you see their life force change? Like,
oh my gosh, Karila, yes. Sorry.
Yes. So because what I'm thinking of is my ex's mum used to rescue chickens.
Oh my
like
god!
Battery farm chickens.
Yeah.
And she would get these. People would steal these chickens from battery farms, sell them to her, and these chickens would turn up with like no feathers, completely traumatized. And then with only a few months of care, they'd be like fat, happy, normal chickens with all their feathers back. Like, it's amazing what love and care can actually do in terms of repair, especially I think with children, because children have this, my guides say the shadow isn't actually fixed in the children yet. It's not like, it's still fluid, you know, like it's not. And so I'm just curious, I'm not saying that the trauma goes completely, but do you see this shift in them? Do you see them?
Massively. The kids are all happy, fully feathered chickens. They all are.
Being fire trucks.
They're being fire trucks. They're fully feathered, flapping their gorgeous wings and living their dreams. Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this type of work for about 10 years. So some of our kids that came to us very early days are now graduating from college. Like, we just had our three first college graduates, and our first one was a girl, Veronique. She graduated from like fashion beauty school, and now she has her own hair salon. Oh, love it. She got married.
Generational change, though, isn't it? I mean, that is generational change. It's not just her life, but it's her children.
Yes.
Who she will marry, who her family will be, and then the opportunity for her children all come from that act of kindness that brought her to education and learning and now having her own business. It's so powerful, isn't it? That ripple that it can have on communities.
Yes.
And is she still, in our Western way, we can spend years and years of therapy and also dealing with the trauma from our childhood that is, I think all trauma is trauma, but being orphaned and a child prostitute
situationally different.
Is a level of bodily trauma that a lot of people don't experience, and so would you say that, like, do you feel like she's still carrying that, or is it something that like she's transcended? I'm just curious.
If we're specifically,
the way we refer to trauma in this culture is like you're in therapy for years. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. And that's what we really try to do is we're only in their lives for a certain amount of time, and then they go off to be young adults, and we hope to produce young, healthy, hopefully, these strong as they can be adults in their communities. So, and we don't have access, like in West Africa, you don't have a lot of access to things like, therapy, therapists, like any EMT, you don't have access at all. I mean, and it's a culture that's not really trusting of those type of modalities as well. At least all my friends and my experiences there, they're like, oh, that's for like the Western people. Like,
but it is such a statement that love can do a whole load of therapy, like
totally.
The love and the care and the kindness and the what is your dream is a whole load of healing.
Well, can I ask, is, because I don't know about this area of the world, is there a religious background where people can turn to faith, a source, something for guidance that perhaps is of a different type that helps build communities or bring community together that can help people?
It's a really great question. And the answer is a resounding yes. So in Benin specifically, again, I speak for my own, I've lived there for many years on and off. I had a house there. So these are my experiences, but I would say it's like 50-50. So like half the country is Christian, half the country is Muslim, and then everybody either practices or believes in some type of voodoo. So it is the birthplace of voodoo. So every time if you travel to like Haiti or like other countries where during the diaspora, it kind of spread throughout the world, voodoo did start in Benin, parts of Nigeria, Togo, right in that part of West Africa. So it's still very, very strong as like a prominent religion. So even people who might say, like many of my friends who are Christian there, they're like, we don't believe in the voodoo. We don't practice that. That is like dark magic, right? But when push comes to shove, when you ask them, if you say, well, this person's coming around and they say that they're a voodoo priest, then my Christian friends will run away because they're like, ooh, that's powerful. We don't want to be a part of it. You know, they might not worship in the voodoo practice, but they still believe in the power of it. So that's why I say, even though people might not practice it, they believe in the power of it. It's very much in there. It's not even, it is religion, but it is in the culture. It's in everything. There's voodoo and there's this magic in everything that's done in that part of the world. And it's this rich tapestry of these three things coming together where people get along, by the way. Benin is a democratic country, fairly safe. You've got people that are practicing these two major world religions where people like in the Western world can't get their acts together to be kind to one another. And then you've got these countries that people would look at and say, oh, you're not really that developed. Yet they're living way elevated above and beyond what all these other countries, Western, more developed countries are living. They're living in harmony. They coexist. They learn from each other. You've got a mosque next to a church, and then after the services, everybody gets together. Like, it's a very cohesive, fairly safe country. So it's beautiful. I mean, so when you ask that, yeah, there's the family, the religion, the culture. It's so thick. It's
the magic
when you're there. The magic is in the air. You can feel it. Like when you breathe it in, you feel like this magic African air just filling your body, like every cell. Talk about life force activation. Just step down on that continent if you haven't already, because it is incredible. It's incredible.
It's interesting, Sarah, because I was going to ask a question that's I toyed whether to ask it, because you give so much, and you give so much of your life force, and you give so much of your heart. It is evident from the day you were dreaming of the fire truck that you have a caring heart. And I just wanted to ask, what keeps you so positive? Because you have seen in your lifetime and lifetimes within this lifetime so much of what people might consider pain, so much of the hard end of life force. I didn't want to use the word dark side, because as you said, sometimes passing can be a positive thing. And like you say, I have been with someone as they pass, and what an honor it is to be with someone in that environment and that moment. But I just wanted to ask, what keeps you so positive, and how do you fill up your life force? I mean, it sounds like you fill it up from the work that you do, but I'm curious, what makes Sarah fill up her life force? What keeps you wanting to be more fire trucks, to be redder, to be bigger out there?
Look, I believe that we are just guests passing through this planet. And so I think we should all strive to leave the planet and the world a bit better than when we got to borrow it, because we're just borrowing it for the time being. And that doesn't mean you have to move to Africa. You don't have to do all these. Just help your neighbor carry groceries up her stairs or something. Like you're going to leave a legacy in her life in those 5 minutes. And it doesn't take grandiose gestures. But I truly believe that. So that's why, like, I call myself like an authentic chameleon. Like, I genuinely, for some reason, since I was very little, I can put myself in situations and find joy in them. And I have not lived a full, like, happy-go-lucky, like nothing bad has ever happened to me in my life. I could probably do a whole nother podcast on my own traumas and violent traumas, and I was almost murdered in a situation in 2018, and it was very violent, and I've gone
Mind sharing, we do have time.
It was a home invasion. It was somebody that I was dating. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and he was stalking me, and then 2 months after I had broken up with him, he broke into my home and had a gun. This was in San Francisco, so many Americans have guns. That's a different podcast. It was very violent, and he tried to burn my house down, and he had a backpack full of stuff to burn my house down and to rape me and to murder me with his gun. Unfortunately, I escaped, but he ended up killing himself in my flat, which is great for me, to be honest with you, because he'd still be terrorizing my life. It was very violent, and then I was getting death threats from his family and friends. I had to go into hiding. There was this big police inquiry. They had a private investigator following me because they thought maybe I had something to do with it.
Oh my God.
Because his family didn't know me. Like, this is only someone I knew for like 6 months. This wasn't a serious relationship, so his family didn't know me. So it was awful. I mean, we've all gone through traumas, all of us. Mm-hmm. And you asked me, Fiona, like, how do I keep my life force up? These are genuine beliefs I have. So the only thing I can say is when I say these things, it comes from my place of authenticity that's in my fibers. It's just in my little vibrational cell DNAs. And that is, life can hand you a bunch of crap that you don't ask for. Life can put you in situations where you are around dying people. You can put yourself in situations where you're seeing horrible things happen, like maybe in West Africa, right? Or it could be trauma that you didn't ask for, like 2018, what happened to me. Regardless of those things, I think it pushes us all up into a place of either, trauma or survival or having to move forward through life, right? Whether it's our own choice or not, we're thrust up against this wall of trauma, let's just say. And I think we have two choices. We can either let our experiences, the trauma, the watching a lot of suffering in the world, things like this, we can let it sit in the corner. Imagine your life like a living room. We can let all of those things sit in the corner of our living room like a little shrine. And it's a pile of shit. Can we say shit on the podcast?
Yeah. Everything goes.
Life can throw shit at you, and that shit can either sit in your living room and stink up your living room.
As a shit altar. I like it.
A shit altar, yeah. And we can keep spraying it down with Febreze so we can cover it up. We can put a nice tablecloth on it. We can
Don't Febreze your shit altar.
Don't Febreze it. But we can, and we can start piling so much on top of the pile of shit that maybe one day you barely recognize it. But the truth is, it's always going to stink up your life. It's always going to find its way in. It's always going to waft its way in. It's always going to, hot summer day, you're going to smell it. It's going to be there. And the choice is up to you, and there is no judgment in either choice because we are all different people. But I do believe the other choice that we have is we take that pile of shit and we work with it, and we do the work, and we face the shit, and we navigate through it, and we put our waders on, and we turn that shit into manure. And with that manure, we plant a fucking flower garden. And we plant a flower garden that is so damn bright, you can't even look directly at it as those flowers are coming up. They're shining so bright in the sun. They're so glittery and sparkly and full of color, like we started, that people can't even look directly at it. It's so spectacular from what you've built from shit. And I think that those are, a spectrum. If you want to do opposite ends of a spectrum, the two choices, of course, there's choice in between those two as well. And so it's where you fall, where you land, and turning shit into manure isn't easy. I mean, that's where you have to face all the trauma, the people dying, the seeing like cultural practices when in West Africa. And at the end of the day, we don't live in a sparkly, beautiful world, but we can find the magic, because I don't care what people say. There is magic in this world, and it's around you 24/7 all of the time.
And manure is the magic of the planet, man. Like, we do not live in a shiny planet. We live in a planet full of manure.
Yes.
Like, manure is the magic of Mother Earth, for sure. I feel like what's coming to me is that how your shit altar becomes manure is when you receive care, when you receive love. If you want to help someone else's shit altar become manure, be that neighbor that carries their stuff up the stairs, or go as far as you do and actually go and rescue the children and give them care and give them
compassion.
Love.
For me, it's compassion for yourself, but also for your community, for others. And you said something interesting right at the very start, which was no judgment. And I think that that's really important, that we don't try and tell people how they should be according to our version of what good looks like when we're not even living our own good. That's kind of like a very Western approach to the world. And, you know, the self-help industry is like, hey, look at me, I'm so great, you should all want to be like me, but we're all deliciously different. And I think if we can all just be compassionate in whatever that means to ourselves and literally our neighbors, then it does spread. And spread the shit manure that way.
Spread the manure.
You get manure and you get some manure and you
throw your manure all over the place.
Maybe all be covered in it constantly.
We throw it at the government.
That is definitely another problem. Of which I feel like we need to have you back every week, Sarah. Our time has flown by, and I knew it was going to be a colourful joy. And for people, you know, you can't see us, but I have just been enthralled and drawn to Sarah in this conversation, and every word that you have shared has really landed in different parts of my body as you've been describing your journey from the dreamer state, and how much you're helping open children up to that as well. So my heartfelt thanks to you for sharing that with us and our listeners today. There's a lot we can take from it.
Thank you.
I'm so happy you exist in the world, Sarah. I'm so happy that you're doing the work that you're doing. It's amazing.
And changing lives. You literally are changing lives. And as I said, not just today, but for the generations that follow, for those girls and their future families as well. And that's not many people can say that they do that.
I actually have 2 questions for you.
Of course you do, Karila.
One,
I'll be brief, yes.
One is, who should we have on the show next?
Who should we have on the show next? I mean, honestly, you should have my girlfriend. She's amazing. Yes. My partner, yes. She's incredible. She does hospice work, so she works for Marie Curie, but her, she's got a great life force story. She's written about life force in a chapter in a book even. She would be interesting to interview.
We would love to have her. Please hook us up. Mm-hmm. And the other question I wanted to ask is, what is your dream?
My dream is simply, and I like this, is I don't know, but I've never known, because I'm not that person that's like, okay, 5 years from now I'm going to do this, because I very much believe in the day-to-day journey. So I'm much more of an organic person. So my answer is, I don't know. I have lots of things, like I definitely want to leave an impact on the planet. How that is going to be, I don't know. Next, what do I do next? You know, and so the answer is, I don't know, but I like that.
Well, you're definitely leaving an impact on the planet, for sure.
You're definitely. Well, thank you again, Sarah, for joining us.
Thank you to you both. Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure and so much fun. Thank you.
And if people want to donate to your charity, how can they help?
Actually, I'm glad you asked that. They cannot, because we have just shifted all of our projects from relying on foreign aid to relying on aid from within Benin, for Benin, by Benin. So that was our ultimate goal starting this, is to basically, like, the whole teach people how to fish, not to just whatever that thing is. So rather than relying on foreign aid and infusing, we've used the last 10 years to build up a community and sustainable projects that we don't have to rely on foreign aid. So actually, just in January 2024, we shut down our donor channels. The projects are still going, but we don't actually want to take any more donations, because we have sustainability projects within Benin, financially funded within their own community. So we've taught a community together, collectively, we've done this together.
So if people want to help, they can go and help their own community.
Yes, go help your own community. Build up your own community. Even in your own neighborhood. I mean, gosh, how many of you listening know your neighbors? How many of you actually know your neighbors? That's a good start.
Wow.
I can't believe we just ended on that bombshell of inspiration. I wish we could go back to the start and start all over again. We will definitely talk again, Sarah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
You're amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I'll definitely pass. I'll talk to Celine and see if she wants to do it. You should definitely have her as well. She's an amazing human.
Thank you so much. Actually speechless. Like, how can one person be spreading so much good in the world?
She's an inspiration, truly. And there's a line that stuck with me right at the very beginning where she said, I want to try everything on the planet before I leave it. And she used the word legacy a couple of times. And she is someone that I truly believe will leave a huge footprint through her work, through her heart, through her compassion, through her curiosity to want to try everything. And you know what? Her action and actually doing something as well. Truly inspiring.
Truly inspiring. And she does it with so much pizzazz. Like, you know, I don't mean to be judgmental, but like, you don't expect her to be having this level of impact because she's just so bubbly and happy. Do you know what I mean? Like, and yet,
well, you know, we could see Sarah, but for everyone who couldn't, she has blue and pink hair and massive, big, colorful jewelry and just a big smile on her face from start to finish. Yet she is talking about what some people might consider very harrowing situations and confronting of life that she has seen in her short lifetime. And yet that's why I had to ask the question of how she finds that source of positivity for herself, because it oozes out of her.
It really does. I mean, she is full of the life force of giving, man. Like, it's just so amazing.
I was going to say I want what some of she's having, but it's obviously manure.
Yeah, manure or being a fire truck. I mean, she is a fire truck. You know, like, her childhood dream is realized. She is a fire truck that is going in and putting out the emotional, the trauma fires of people's lives. It is amazing.
It's that whole thing about careful what you wish for and careful what you manifest, because you don't always know in which form it's going to show up. So I want to be a fire truck. Well, that's the vehicle that quickly and swiftly goes in to help people in, you know, dangerous situations. And that is exactly what has manifested in her life. So anyone that's listening that's got a crazy notion of doing something, put it out there, because you never know what form it might appear in your life. There's a lesson there for sure.
For sure. It's amazing.
Yeah. So, well, I hope that we can get Sarah into the Life Force Cafe and into our extended audience conversations.
She's already said yes. She already said yes to it because she says yes. What's the question? So we already have her in the Life Force Cafe. I'm going to use that yes.
There you go. Now we just have to work on the question. Well, thank you again, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Karila, for holding space with me and Sarah. And I hope everybody has been inspired by this conversation.
May the Life Force be with you all. We hope this conversation has topped up your Life Force energy. If it has, then please help us spread the Life Force. Like, share, subscribe, all of that. And may the Life Force be with all of us.